Baby pterodactyl living in Arizona. The following are words of one of the two eyewitnesses who were in the desert near Tucson. Quote, I have seen one of these creatures under a bridge. My son was with me. It was a baby and was covered in soft, whitish-looking fur or down. There is no way this creature was a bird. The top of its head was molting, with the top knot protruding. We were standing not more than 15 feet from this baby. It was unhappy with our arrival and spread its wings out and tried to adopt a bird-like attack, but it was almost toppling over onto its face because of the incredible wingspan, at least 3 to 4 feet on each side. I looked at my son and he said, Is that a monkey? It was standing erect and attempting to flap those incredible wings. It was almost comical. It had a long, narrow beak, no teeth, and stood about 2.5 to 3 feet tall. My son said, I don't want to be here when Mommy comes back. And we left the place. Around the end of September 2025, a lady was driving with her grandkids to the Costco in Kona, Big Island of Hawaii, when she saw what she first thought was a small plane. They often see planes landing at the nearby airport, but as she turned into the parking lot, she noticed it made a sharp turn and flapped its wings. By the time she parked the car, it was gone. That grandmother later reported, quote, I know we don't have birds that big, as it was the size of a small plane. We're still stunned, and I've been trying to find other people's accounts of similar sightings. A new report. Please listen to the words of the following eyewitness. The encounter was in 2010. My wife and I saw one. We were on the beach at Matagorda Bay on the Texas coast around 3 a.m. There was a Texas and American flag flying, lit up with spotlights. We were just strolling on the beach, and I noticed something flying over the spotlights. Something very large. I yelled to my wife, What is that? About that time, it banked away from us like an airplane about 60 feet off the ground. It appeared to glow in the dark after it had cleared the spotlights. It was huge, probably a 30-foot-plus wingspan. There was no mistake. Nothing else looks like that. I turned to my wife and asked, What did you see? She said one of those dinosaur birds, a pterodactyl. The crest was high on the back of its head, leathery skin, and you could make out the veins in its wings. This was 100% real. Sightings of apparent pterosaurs in Ohio. The pterodactyl jarred us at 2 a.m. On October 14, 2025, a guy gave us this comment under one of our videos, quote, Me and my brother seen one fly by our porch right off Highway 161 by Westerville Road at 2 a.m. last Friday. We thought we was crazy and couldn't wrap our minds around what we seen, unquote. Notice that this encounter with an apparent pterosaur was by Westerville Road on the north side of Columbus, Ohio. Was it just a coincidence that many years earlier, a lady and her daughter saw a huge, quote, pterodactyl, unquote, that flew over Westerville Road? That sighting was in the winter of 2014, and it was about 4 miles south of where the two brothers recently saw a flying creature that made them feel kind of crazy. I'm Jonathan Whitcomb, but let me get to the confession. A few decades ago, when I was a very young man, which would make it quite a few decades ago, my sister was in high school, Pasadena High School in Southern California. She had a friend, we'll call her Mary. But Mary told my sister that she had seen a pterodactyl just at the northern end of Allen Avenue in Altadena, California, a few miles from where we lived. It was a huge pterodactyl that flew up into the mountains. Now my sister tried to convince her, wait, maybe you saw some kind of very large bird, but no. Mary was convinced she'd seen a pterodactyl. What did I think? I thought, oh, that girl is crazy. is absolutely ridiculous. How could she think that she saw a giant pterodactyl that was alive and flying up into the mountains near her house? It's just impossible. How could she think that? Well, that's my confession, because a few decades later, when I was right in the middle of my investigation in this narrow branch of cryptozoology, my sister reminded me of that. And she got the phone number for this lady we'll call Mary, and I gave her a phone call. Now, by this time, I had interviewed people from all over the world, hundreds of eyewitnesses of similar things, pterodactyls of various sizes, some of them quite big. Why, in Arkansas, would an apparent pterosaur fly over a river? When Kathy McNeil was 16, she and her father were on a cliff about 300 feet above a river around Van Buren or Cedarville. Kathy was kicking rocks over the edge of the cliff when a medium-sized pterodactyl-like creature flew out from under them, and it soared out away from the cliff. The wingspan was about 8 feet, and those two eyewitnesses heard the whooshing sound from those wings as it took off. Kathy talked with her father, and they agreed that it looked like a small pterodactyl. Pterodactyl sightings in Los Angeles. These are some of the encounters people have had with apparent living pterosaurs in Los Angeles County. Number 1. The lady is anonymous but leaves us the following testimony.
I am 38 years old and a very sensible woman with an education and skeptical mind. This bird is real and now in a very populated area. At 11:45 a.m., I was sitting under my gazebo in Lakewood, California. My dog started going crazy barking. I walked out from under the awning and lost my breath. I saw this huge dragon pterodactyl-looking thing.
The lady clearly saw the flying creature here, perched on the phone line. It may have been like the pterosaur seen in Cuba in the 1960s and early 70s. The animal probably flies through this storm channel at night. The lady drew a rough sketch of the end of its tail. Under the phone line is this channel. A game camera was placed there, but it failed to photograph any pterosaur. But the sister of that lady saw the camera and asked about it. She then reported her own sighting of something like a dragon flying near that same storm channel, but about 3 years earlier. That sighting by the sister was at about 11 at night, but she told nobody about that strange flying creature until she heard about her sister's more recent encounter with a, quote, dragon pterodactyl, unquote. Almost every continent on Earth has people who've reported they saw a flying creature like a pterodactyl or a dinosaur-like thing with wings but no feathers. How many persons worldwide may have seen a living pterosaur? In the past 100 years, millions of persons may have seen one or more apparent non-extinct pterosaurs, what many persons would call a pterodactyl. What is going on here? Many dictionaries define pterosaur with a word like extinct. With that definition, no such animal can be alive, not even one animal. Well, why don't we set aside that word for a moment? Listen to some eyewitnesses. Notice the following description of the long tail.
And then when it went to dive down by the tree line, I noticed that there was a long tail with a bulb at the end of it, and I kept double checking to make sure, and I'm like, that has to be a tail.
Okay, let's look into this. I've been working on this investigation for 22 years. I've spent well over 17,000 hours on this investigation into the possibility of modern pterosaurs. You're probably wondering, well, why in the world would somebody believe that this young man, Jonathan Archer, has seen a living pterosaur? I mean, this long tail with, it looks like something at the end, a flange structure at the end of the tail. Maybe it's just a misidentification of some bird, and they're looking at the legs and the feet of a great blue heron or something like that. It's much more to this than you might think. Some of the sightings of these flying creatures have long tails and have a flange at the end of the tail. Sometimes the eyewitness will actually see legs that are separate from the long tail. So there's no question it's a long tail.